Great evening, everyone, and welcome to Monday, 6 p.m. We're back at it again. Welcome to Conversations with Chosen Pen. I am Dr. Anissa Short, your host. Dr. Norma is unfortunately not with us, but I'm sure she'll be watching very, very soon. Have no doubt about it. So, as with every Monday night this month, we've been focusing on a salute to fathers. We've talked to various men from various backgrounds, those of which who, of course, share the common bond of being a father, but then many of them were authors. And so tonight is no different. I'm super excited about you all meeting our guest. Some of you may already know him. Let's be clear. We've talked about him quite a bit in the past. But before we get to that, I want to remind you of this coming Saturday, the 29th at 12 noon. We are hosting our 21st century fatherhood experience. It's going to be a virtual TEDx experience. Connect right here on the platform of Facebook. We're going to be airing live on YouTube as well. The 21st Century Fatherhood Experience is going to be an interesting collaboration of men talking about the dynamics of fatherhood in the 21st century. You don't want to miss it. It's free to the public. So share this with every man that you know. You'll join us right here on the Chosen Pen page, and you'll be able to chime in and even ask questions if you so desire. In addition to that, the next big event that we have with Chosen Pen is on August the 3rd. On August the 3rd, Chosen Pen Publishing is partnering with Brown Girls and Brown Boys book tour. Dr. Pam is the host. She takes this tour to multiple cities throughout the summer and has now, I think this is either her fourth or her fifth year. We are delighted to have her here in the city of Fayetteville. And so this festival-like event is geared towards children. The emphasis is literacy. So we are looking for authors to be a vendor. If you have a book for kids of all ages, specifically for children, at a primary age, but we really don't discriminate as long as they're classified as a child. If you are a local author or someone within driving distance, we would love to have you out. This book is geared for children. So even if you are not an author, but you might sell products or offer services that are geared to children, we want you in the house as a vendor. There will be face painting. There will be live readings. There's going to be popcorn. There's going to be Italian ice. Again, it's a festival type atmosphere on August the 3rd. It will begin from at 12 o'clock. It would end at 4 p.m. There is an investment if you choose to be an author, but guess what? Moms, dads, you can bring your kids out and it's absolutely free, but you've got to register so we'll know how many to plan for. This event again is August 3rd. Share this with your friends, your family, anyone that's within driving distance of Fayetteville, North Carolina, but definitely anyone that lives in the Cumberland County area. You need to be here again. August 3rd, Saturday from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. It is a festival type event being held and hosted, powered by Chosen Pen Publishing at 1420 Hope Loop Road. That is inside of the Family Life Center of New Life Academy. So mark your calendars, and if you want more information, then go to chosenpen.com and we'll tell you more about that. So without further ado, let's meet our guest, Dr. James A. Anderson, all the way from the state of Michigan. I think I said that right. Is it Lansing, Dr. Anderson?
Lansing, Michigan.
All right, welcome back.
To my grandson who plays football for Michigan State.
All right.
Brandon Lewis, number 36.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us and great for that shout out. What was that name again?
Brandon Lewis, number 36.
With Michigan State.
Yes, he plays football
right, great.
for Michigan State.
All right, excellent. So, Dr. Anderson, how have you been since we talked last?
Oh, I've been adjusting and adapting to you know, but your audience might not know that my daughter passed away last year.
Right.
From long-term COVID. And I've just had a major adjustment to make in my life because I was committed to her, and, you know, I had to raise her for a long time period by myself, and she's mentally challenged. And I'll talk a little bit about that as you ask questions.
Okay, sounds good. We are talking about a salute to fatherhood, and of course, we would be remiss not to invite you to be a part of the process, because as a result of me working with you and getting your recent book published, I learned a lot about, well, not a lot, but a little bit about the fact that, you know, you've got two daughters and one had recently transitioned, and that brought about a change in your life. So let's talk about fatherhood, Dr. Anderson. Now you have two daughters, is that correct?
I have two daughters. Well, I had two daughters, and one passed away last year.
Right.
Yes.
So if the daughter that passed away, what was her age?
Her age was 42, although she
Okay.
functioned at about 6 or 7.
Gotcha. And then was that your youngest or your oldest?
That was my youngest,
Okay.
and
And then your oldest daughter is.
is a nurse in New Orleans.
Okay, all right. So you've been on the road traveling as a new author, but regardless of that, you've also been adjusting, as you've already said, with the change in your dynamic with your family as a result of her transitioning and things of that nature. Let's
Yeah,
talk a little bit about your fatherhood experience, Dr. Anderson. What did you learn during your fatherhood experience? What did you learn about fatherhood that you did not know prior to? And I know you're probably going to tap into a little bit of your background too, but share that with the viewing audience.
sure. I'll share one aspect of my background. I was an abandoned child, and I was left in the hospital. Never seen my parents. Never talked to them. Don't even know their names. Don't know my real name, etc. And abandonment has become a theme in my life, and positive and negative. But what did I learn about the fatherhood experience? Well, first of all, I was unaware of the time demands that one undergoes when they are a single parent. And so,
Right.
I have been so respectful of single mothers because they're often the parent that's left with children or a child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wasn't aware of those time demands. And so I had to reduce the time that I gave to things I like to do because I had to attend to my daughters and especially to my mentally challenged daughter.
Right.
And it was kind of an adjustment to place your children's needs ahead of yours
Mm-hmm.
because they were important. They were critically important. And one aspect of I like to tease women and say, well, I can probably braid hair better than you can because I have to braid hair every day for my daughters, especially my mentally challenged daughter. And I also, just as a pragmatic matter, had to come to the realization of the financial cost of raising kids as a single parent. And
Yeah.
now I understand why you hear single parents work 2 and 3 jobs. When they do, they don't get to spend the time with their kids. They don't get to attend to their needs like they should. And they also generally don't have a life of themselves. So
Right.
I had to learn what the financial cost was of being a single parent. And then lastly, because my experience started in New Orleans when I was working at Xavier University as a faculty member, I had to learn to expect certain disasters. Like hurricanes were commonplace. And when Hurricane Katrina hit, I fortunately had moved to Texas, but I couldn't locate my children.
Oh
All
wow.
the codes were shut down, and uh, I just was not able to talk to them for 4 or 5 days. And I was crying every day, and I was cursing God. I was doing all kind of machinations that didn't make sense. But it was
It was
like
an emotional time, though. It was very emotional time.
watch Katrina on TV and see the bodies floating in the water and all of that. So with climate change, and I watch the news every night, every day, and every night, and I've seen the results of climate change in this country and the flooding and the people losing their homes and children being struck by fallen trees, kids sleep in their bedrooms and fallen tree. So you have to be ready. I mean, you can't anticipate sometimes some of those things, but you have to be
Right.
ready for them.
Right.
And I immediately picked up the phone and called my oldest daughter and said, do you have an emergency bag packed, in case you have another major disaster in New Orleans? And she said,
Right.
yes, Daddy, I do.
Well, you
So
know what, Dr. Anderson, what I will say is that some of the things that you've conveyed in sharing just today mirror the same sentiments some of the other men have, and even single moms. So that goes to show that the dynamics of parenthood, fatherhood, motherhood, or parenthood is identical regardless of your geographical location, your socioeconomic situation. You mentioned being a professor at Xavier, whether you're a professor at Xavier or you're working at the Family Dollar Store, the concerns and the needs and the wants and the desires and the concerns of parents are pretty universal. I
yes, they
appreciate.
are.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agreed with you. I said, yes, they are. They are universal.
They're universal. You're universal. So now, with you having not experience fatherhood from your biological father, how does that translate for you? I mean, as a woman who grew up with her mom and her dad in her home, I have a general idea of what my parents did for me and what would be expected if I were a mom and my husband was a father, that kind of thing. But for someone who didn't have that personal background, I know you eventually had adoptive parents or people who care for you. How how were you able to pivot, or was it a hard pivot for you?
Well, initially, from birth to 11 years old, I was in the streets pretty much of Washington, D.C. And uh, you tend to take on male role models who are also in the streets. So gangsters and gangbangers and other individuals. The only males I was probably close to that were positive role models were the priests that were affiliated with the Catholic parish I was involved in. But I actually was very close to the nuns, the Order of Black Catholic nuns who were at the elementary school I attended. And they recognized that they could not be fathers, but they could still advise me and guide me as a young man. And they
Right.
did a good job of that. But and then even when I was 11 and I went to live with another couple, um, they were older. They were an older couple who had never raised children. I think my adopted mother had 3 miscarriages, so they wanted a child really bad.
Right.
And but they weren't used to getting a man child. At 11, I was a man child. I had to look out for myself, and
Exactly.
etc. And I tried not to be trouble for them, but I had my ways that were associated with just living in the streets.
Yes.
And they were a good Christian couple, and they tried their best, to work with me and gave me a good home and etc. But I saw that they were from North Carolina, but they weren't well off. Let's put it that way.
Yes, sir.
So I never asked for things financially and never wanted to, stress them out in any way. So sometimes, a child grows up in an environment that doesn't, quote, give them a picture of a father.
Mm-hmm.
Even my adopted father was too old. He liked to smoke cigars and watch Lawrence Welk. And I didn't want to do that. He wanted to
Yeah.
watch baseball on TV and stuff. So I didn't want to do those things. So, I had to fend for myself pretty much. But when you talk about pivot, I like to think of pivoting in two ways. There's the pivoting that you might choose to do, and there's the pivoting that you have to do.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, in terms of the have to, that was the part that involved taking care of my mentally challenged daughter.
Gotcha.
Then, as she got older, my adopted parents also fell ill with Alzheimer's. And so I'm taking care of all three of them.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
father to 3 children almost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was extremely stressful. And there were times, Anissa, that I would get them ready. I'd feed them and get them ready for bed, shower them and everything. And then I'd lay down on the couch and look up to the heavens and say, God, I can't do this anymore. I'm tapped
Mm-hmm.
out financially. I'm tapped out mentally. I'm tapped out emotionally.
Right.
The next thought that would come in my head would be, if you don't take care of them, who will?
Yeah.
And
That
that
kept you
I
going.
snap back to reality.
Yeah. Yeah. But
So yeah, go ahead.
you speak to the human experience, though. I'm sure there are a lot of single moms that with multiple children that have no help say the same thing, or parents. I don't even want to distinguish it to just single parenting. Even moms and dads together go through those stressors, and
Yeah.
have to make ends meet, and and have to be there for children and or older parents. But I can imagine, we say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that's with two parents, it takes a village. So if it's one
Or
parent,
with relatives, even if you have
exactly.
relatives in the
Right,
village. And
right,
I had none. I mean, I didn't know who my birth parents were,
right,
and my adopted parents, their family of sorts. I wasn't too close to them.
right.
So I had to do all of this by myself. Um, and then when you talk about a pivot, for example, one of the major pivots for me was attending to the needs of my oldest daughter when she started menstruating.
Oh yeah, that's a totally
So her
different.
mother did not want to be involved in talking her through that,
Yeah,
walking and talking her through that. So I had to do it. and which meant I immediately had to go talk to other women, and I had to read up a lot and other stuff, and prepare her for it. So that's
Right.
a major pivot for a man,
Right.
to learn how to do that. Yeah.
Dr. Anderson, you bring a very different paradigm to this conversation, and I'm saying this because I'm trying not to talk about your book as much because we're going to get to that, but because I know your background. So you grew up in the streets. You talked about how gangbangers and the like were your family. They were the people that were
And
they were
prostitutes, you know,
right, gangbangers and prostitutes, right? So here you
prostitutes
are,
adopted me as the son that they probably were never going to have in their life.
right,
So I
right.
was close to them. And the nuns and the prostitutes worked together to see me through and get me out of the gang and, start me on a positive pathway in life.
So I'm thinking about you, the gangbanger, you the young man that's been influenced by prostitutes and pimps, and then you were nurtured by nuns and priests, and then you get sent to a couple that you know not of, right? And your history has been very rough, on the rough side of the mountain, as people say. And then as time progresses on, you end up being the daddy of two little girls.
Yes. Yes. And, that experience has taught me a lot about being a man and what being a man really means, accepting responsibility, anticipating certain things in their lives, especially their needs in their life, like I mentioned, menstruation, and
Mm-hmm.
just anticipating things and being ready. I tried to not be surprised by anything as they grew older.
Yes, sir.
I was tried to be prepared for everything. And even though you try, you always aren't. But you do the best you can.
So, Dr. Anderson, did you find that your experience with homelessness and growing up with the gangs and prostitutes, and even working with the nuns and priests, and then even being transitioned to a home where you knew not of, how do you see all of that preparing you for your fatherhood experience? Was there anything? I know that's not one of the questions that I gave you, but I have to believe that even though on the outside looking in, people would look at that as a negative, that you had a negative life experience. But I do believe sometimes, even in the midst of us having experiences that are not always the best for us, there is something that we can glean from it that serves us for the better. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that is. And, one of the themes in my life has been abandonment, and not only of me by my parents, but, even, I don't want to talk harsh of the children's mother, but, when she left and I had to take, for example, my youngest daughter with me when I left New Orleans to go to Pennsylvania for
Mm-hmm.
another job. And I took her with me and raised her 12 years there by myself. Um, and so you have to be flexible. You have to
Mm-hmm.
know how to deal with all kinds of circumstances. Even though some of those circumstances put me under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, I had to do the best I could and make do in
Yeah.
those situations.
Your childhood gave you that experience early.
Yeah, but what else the childhood did was it showed me that the women in my life, the nuns, the prostitutes, etc., they were the jewels of the universe, I like to call them, because they were the ones who stepped forward to be there for me in troubled times, especially, before I got adopted. And even when I got adopted, even though my mother didn't know how to raise me because she was getting a man child, 11-year-old man child already. Uh, she did her best. She did her
Yes.
best. And, later in my book, I talk about how I found out later in life that she had been real politically active in the streets. She and her little organization, they tried to do things for Black people and would meet Black people at bus stops and try to get them, to unionize and do some other things. And I wasn't aware of that when I was young.
Yeah.
Uh, the other thing that helped me, Anissa, was my evolution into the Black nationalism and the Black movement. So I wanted to be a strong Black man, which meant I had to be a strong Black father.
Mhm.
Those, you can't be incompatible. You can't
Yes.
say, I'm a strong Black man, but I'm a so-so father.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Strong
good,
Black
Dr.
man,
Anderson.
strong, Black father. And those two must go together.
I love it. I absolutely love it. You hear people say things like, he's very prominent in the community and he does a lot of great work in the community, but then he's a sorry father. And
Yeah,
so I always say, and that's not to say that anyone is perfect, but because I had a father in my home, I was like, my dad was just as influential. Of the more he said his first responsibility was us, and then everything else came second. So I love the fact that you said I can't be a strong black man in my community and be a so-so father. The two have to go hand in hand. They
yeah,
have to go hand
they
in hand.
absolutely have to go hand in hand.
One is the other. They're not either or, they're both. Would you say?
And it's like you're looking in two mirrors, okay?
Right.
And you see yourself in one in a positive way, and then you look at the other mirror, and you're not even showing up in that mirror because you're
Yes.
not there. You're not
Right.
there for your kids. And I have many friends right now who on Mother's Day, well, especially Father's Day, when I asked them, I said, "Did you talk to your father? Did you do something with your father?" And they would look at me and said, "I haven't seen my father in 10 years."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I would feel sorry for them. At least my father abandoned me at birth. So I
Right.
didn't have a relationship with them. They
Right.
initially weren't in the household. But I feel sorry for people who have fathers, especially women who have fathers and uh, aren't able to connect with them at any
Right.
level.
Well, that is unfortunate. It really is. So here's the last question before we talk about your book. As a single father, what did you find least satisfying? If there was, I know you love your daughters to pieces and you were there for them and you know, you were on guard and did everything you could within your power. But the human part of it, what was the least satisfying part of that?
Well, I really didn't. A lot of this discussion we're talking about occurred in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. And so I didn't necessarily enjoy those years the way a single man might,
All right, right.
or a man who, had normal children.
Mm-hmm.
I taking care of my mentally challenged daughter was a tremendous task. And even when I would try to teach her things, I'd get excited that I was trying to teach her things. But then one day I came to the realization that there were things she just never was going to be able to do.
Right,
Learn.
right.
And but she was the love of my life, you know, and
I
we
love it.
bonded together. And like if she came into a room and saw me sitting next to a woman, she would just come and sit down between us.
Yeah.
Wasn't going for that.
She
And a
said,
woman might have
we're
just been
not having this.
woman might have just been a good friend or something.
All right, right.
Uh,
I get it. I get
So
it.
that was one thing. I didn't get to do some things that are, the best years of a man's life are in his 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Right, right.
Travel. I didn't get to even go to concerts and do things I wanted to do because I was always on lockdown. Um, I was working a lot, consulting a lot, flying around the country, consulting a lot because I needed the money.
Yes.
Just taking care of my parents when they got old. In
Right.
7 years, Anissa, I spent $350,000 taking care of my
Oh,
parents.
wow.
That was over and above, and I wasn't living in DC where they were, but I had to hire people to be there 24
Right,
hours in a day.
right.
So that was over and above my other bills. And I look
Yes.
back at it and I try to think, I said, where did I get that money? You just do it,
You
like
were
the
so
same
busy getting it done, you didn't worry about the where. You got
mothers
it done.
taking care of their kids, they just do it. They
Yeah,
find
they do. They absolutely
and
do
they
just do it.
sacrifice in doing so. So that was also, I also found that, and sometimes I'm hesitant to talking about it with people, but I found my relationship with women changed because if you want to have a relationship with me, you had to accept my daughters,
Yes.
my mentally challenged daughters. And
Right.
some of women didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you didn't want to do it, you were history. I didn't even consider you as a partner.
Yeah.
By the same token, if you have a partner via marriage or, you're engaged or you're just involved with somebody, seriously involved, you need to attend to their needs. So trying to balance out attending to the needs of my mentally challenged daughter
Yes.
and at the same time attending to the needs of my partner were sometimes difficult.
I could
And
imagine
I
because you
found
have
in all of that I didn't attend to the needs of myself.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a lot to juggle, Dr. Anderson. It really is.
Yeah.
Let me add this piece of the piece of the conversation because I didn't ask you about this, but I know this because of my connection with you. is that even in the midst of you going through the transitions you had with caring for a child with special needs and having parents with Alzheimer's, you had, and caring for them, and then you had another daughter. When you were in New Orleans working, Xavier, you started a mentoring program for young boys. Tell
I
us a
did.
little bit about that. The reason I want to bring that point up is because there are a lot of young men who, like yourself, did not have fathers in their lives. So the
Mhm.
importance of men reaching out to be a source of positive influence is so important, and that's what your mentoring program did. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was asked by a church and a community center to start a counseling program for young Black males, say between maybe 9 and 15. Okay. And as a psychologist, that is something that I was attracted to. And I thought that I could bring my background, to bear in their life, and also use what I know about psychology. And I was also really into Black psychology and the psychology of the Black experience. But what I found was, even when I did good work with some of these young males, they had to go home. And when they went home, everything changed.
Yeah.
So there was a young male that I was very close to, and we developed a very positive relationship. And he asked me to walk him home one day. And he had, he was a troublemaker and all that before he started counseling. And then he started changing for the better, etc. We go home and we walk into his house, and his mother is on the couch having sex with some man, and you could smell the weed that they had been smoking. And I said to myself, no matter what I do with this youngster, he's got to come home to this.
Yes.
I became very frustrated about that. And, but I still was able, at least to save him for a while. The
Yes.
second thing that happened in New Orleans is I became the person who was asked to write the truancy report for the city. Okay. And what I uncovered when I did the truancy report for 2 or 3 years was racism, that young white boys who got into trouble were taken back to the school or taken home, and versus young Black boys who got in trouble, they were immediately written up as a truant, sometimes taken to police stations, etc. And so I tried to counsel some of those young boys. But again, I'm up against the police, I'm up against the school system that didn't really care much about them and their truancy. They just wrote them off as truants.
Yes, sir.
So those experiences were hard to digest for me because I cared so much and I wanted them to be successful. And I didn't want them to go through the kind of youth I went through.
Right, right. I remember you sharing the story when you started that program while you were there in New Orleans because you were at Xavier, and then the opportunity came for you to move and you left, and then the response at the kids. Share a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah. The kids, oh man, the kids cried when I gathered them together and told them, you know, that I was leaving, and they cried and they begged me to stay, etc. And I felt guilt. I felt a real true sense of guilt that
Wow.
I was abandoning them at times when they needed me the most,
Yes, sir.
needed
Yes, sir.
somebody the most, and it wasn't always somebody in their family. And New Orleans is a very difficult city for a young kid to grow up in because it's just ruthless. It's a ruthless city.
Yeah.
Uh, I still carry that guilt to someday, and I wish I could find that young man that I had grown so close to, and we
Well,
developed.
maybe he'll see this video. Who knows? You just never
Yeah,
know.
maybe
I
so.
think that I would like to believe that the response that you got from the kids upon the getting the news that you were leaving was the measure of how much you made an impact on their lives.
Yes.
So don't be guilty about it. I know that, you had to move because you needed to do what you needed to do for the sake of your family. But I wanted to bring that point. I wanted you to share that story because even with everything that you had going on as a single father and working to make sure that you had some stability in your own immediate family, you still found the time to make an impact. And you did make an impact on the others.
And the one other thing is that's least satisfying about being a father is that I never had a role model
Yeah,
at all about fatherhood. And
right.
um and my I don't know. I try not to do this, Anissa, but I hold it against my birth parents for never having contact and never trying to find me.
Right.
And
Right.
so the abandonment has been prolonged,
Right.
the years of youth into decades,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
And it's very likely, considering that a lot of what we know happens. There's so many different scenarios. And I know you talk about, as a child growing up, you played all these different scenarios in your head, but your biological father may not even known that your mom was pregnant with you. I mean, a
yeah,
whole lot of things. But what I will say is that despite the the way in which everything evolved, you have done you've made a major impact, Dr. Anderson. You really have. You
yeah,
made a great impact. And I commend you on not only the selflessness and the sacrifice you made for your family, being your adoptive parents who weren't really technically your parents, but in your
right.
own biological sisters, but even what you've done in the world of academia on wanting to make a difference and be a difference and reach out. And your book, let's talk about that. It for those who want a practical a practical example of what this looks like, they need to get a copy of your book and read it, because this book is phenomenal. Um, we can get a copy from Amazon now, of course. The Miracle on Cochran Street. Now, you've already tapped into or shared a little bit about what this book covers. It's your memoir. Give the audience a now. Don't tell them everything because we want them to buy the book. Okay, Dr. Anderson.
But uh, I spend time telling people why is it called the miracle? What's
Right.
the miracle in all of this? And the miracle is, if you look at the circumstances I started life in the streets, being a gangbanger, being abandoned by, never having seen your parents, never having talked to them or anything. And yet you look at, I've had a successful career at 6 universities. I retired as a president of a HBCU in North Carolina, Fayetteville State University. And so I say all of that could have happened only because of a miracle. And so I dedicate the book to the nuns and the prostitutes and the other surrogate mothers. There have been 4 or 5 people in my life who tried to step in and be a mother to me. And, and I love them dearly, and I will always treasure my relationship with them. But it's the things that happen early in a child's life that are going to make the difference in their
Right.
definition of self, in their definition of fatherhood, in their definition of motherhood, etc. And I've never small things. For example, I've never had when I was young, I never had birthday parties. I never had a Christmas or Christmas tree. I never had Thanksgiving. Things you take for granted sometimes.
Yeah.
When you don't have those things and you listen to other kids talk about them, okay, you feel so bad because you don't even know what they're talking about. You didn't have that
Right.
experience.
Right.
Yeah.
You have no point of reference. I remember having a conversation with a man and someone that's close to me, and I made reference to I asked him if he would be a part of a writing where you would do a salute to fathers or just a general statement or point of reference with regards to father or fatherhood. I think it may have been approaching Father's Day. And so I said, give me what you have. And if you give me, so he gave me what he had. And he says, feel free to make edits to it as you see fit. And so when I got it, I read it and then I made the adjustments. And then he said to me later, he says, when you asked me to do that, I wanted to assist you. He says, but I had nothing to refer to. He said, because my biological father was never in my life. He was raised by his grandparents. And so when he said that, I said to him, I already know, because when I read it, I could tell. I could just tell.
Yeah.
But when a man has no point of reference, such as yourself, and as he shared, but then you still extend of yourself to make a difference in the lives of other children, that speaks volumes. That speaks to the potential of the human spirit. And so, Dr. Anderson, I appreciate you for what you're willing to share today, your transparency on today. I appreciate your book. Let me tell y'all again, go to Amazon, look for the version of the book that says his name listed is Dr. James A. Anderson, because that A is very important, right, Dr. Anderson?
Oh, very important.
So it's a paperback. You can get the ebook, and you can get a hardback. And in some point in time, Dr. Anderson, we need to revisit that audio book. We'll talk about that more in detail if you're still interested in going that direction. But any final words you want to share with regards to the salute to fatherhood before we go?
Well, I just want to say the moral of the story of my life is that you can't be an absent father. You must step up and be a man. And your definition of manhood is fatherhood often. And you can't be an absent father. You must be there to meet the needs of your children or your partners or your wife, etc. And and you got to stand by that. You just have to be a man. You know, I look at these men out here who talk about being men, and yet they're abusing their kids, or they're, distant from their wives or distant from their partners, etc. Don't spend time to teach their kids anything. Uh, and that can't happen. You just, in your definition of a man, and I'm a psychologist, so I think about manhood from a lot of frames of references, politically, emotionally, etc. To be a father, as we said earlier, is to be a strong black man. And a strong black man has to be a strong black father.
That's
And
good.
you must, yeah.
You must. I love it. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, again for saying yes to this invitation. It's been
Any,
a pleasure talking with you. You have one, my husband says, thanks for the fatherhood nuggets. You all have that Washington, D.C. connection. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you taking time out on this Monday to be with us. This has been another episode of Conversations with Chosen Pen. We will be back next month. As a matter of fact, in the month of July and August, our theme is going to be summer reading series. So we'll be featuring authors with books that you might want to add to your library for the summer months. When you're taking a vacation, hanging out with friends, or just chilling at home, a good book always is what the doctor ordered. And so we want to introduce you to authors and their books and give you opportunity to support other local literary agents in your community. So meet us next week. Same time, same place, Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern. On behalf of Dr. Norma McLaughlin and the Chosen Pen family, thank you again for joining us. We'll see you again next week.